This was the first of 2 overnight trips we were going to take this week to places we had fished, and we're not going to be able to fish them anymore this fall. Started on the Gunnison. We have a great place to fish there. It's a little difficult to get to and to access at the same time. Dogs like it a lot. First we walk down to the river, and then we try to hike way up the bank to a great big long riffle that's fairly shallow water. The undergrowth was nasty this year, but we found a bunch of grasshoppers in the underbrush and a bunch of caddis, interestingly, too. So I started out with that kind of rig. The grasshopper rig did absolutely nothing, so I finally took it off and stuck with a couple of little caddis flies. They were actually very difficult, too. It started getting lots of strikes, but they were kind of the bump your nose to the fly strike and not really take it. So I did hook up a few fish, and I did release a few of them, but it wasn't really great. Eventually changed to a kind of a hair wing caddis up front, and then a flat water one out the back, about a number 16, and it was a little bit better, but not great. Around 4 o'clock, and drove to a nice camping spot we have under this gargantuan cottonwood tree. Sue was going to set up camp a little bit while I walked the dogs down to the stream and did a little more fishing. Did hook and land a nice big fat brown down here. He was 16, 17 inches long. I think he took the hairwing caddis, but it was a good way to finish up the day. We had fun and did play a couple of other fish at the same time down here. There were still some caddis floating around on the water and sitting in the bushes by the edge of the bank when we finally gave up the fishing. Played a little bit of friendly cribbage, and after that had a really nice meal of vegetarian sushi. A great plate of it, and we enjoyed it very much. Next morning we got up and started fishing the same stretch again. I used a hairwing and a flat water for a while and finally gave them up. They were just bumping it and not taking it, so I went completely rogue and tied on a tiny little number 20 flat water, still water caddis at the back end. Could not see it on the water, and at half the time it was sunk. So but regardless of that, I started getting lots and lots of hookups. Probably played and released at least a good dozen fish before we figured that's too much of a good thing, and we gave it up. We drove this nasty road out of the Gunnison Basin up to towards Hotchkiss and headed for Redstone. We didn't have a lot of time today to fish the Crystal, but we're hoping to have at least a couple of hours. It didn't turn out that way. The road construction and some bridge construction on the highway are so bad that it took us literally 2 hours longer than it would have to get to the place in Redstone where we wanted to start fishing. We did get on the river. I had pre-rigged my rod with a nymph setup because it's very low water on the Crystal right now, probably under 90 cubes a second. And I put instead of a thingamabobber that I normally use for a strike indicator, I put a great big stimulator on, assuming it would be less obtrusive. And right off the bat, started catching fish. I couldn't believe it. These little holes where the fish were lying were very good. Almost every one of them produced a fish. We only had about 45 minutes to spend here, so it was tough going through this with rushing around and trying to make the best of it. But each hole we got to, I seemed to either catch a good rainbow or at least hooked a couple of good rainbows. This particular one was almost 15 inches long. It's interesting what happened, though, when the only fish I caught all day that took one of the nymphs was about a foot-long whitefish. All the rest of them, for whatever reason, took the great big stimulator. There's absolutely no sign of insect life along the water here. It's been way too cold. I think everything's dead for the winter. But the fishing turned out to be quite good. It just was stunning to see them take the stimulator instead of one of the nymphs that normally work pretty well here. It just gives you a little picture of what the stream looks like. It's quite shallow. Uh, did catch fish several places, and within the 45 minutes that we had there, I probably released 6 or 8 of them and played about that many more. So that was about it. The big problem with the crystal right now is that while this water you're looking at here is nicely scoured, there's an awful lot of sludge on the bottom. I think that's what's going on that caused the fish to take the surface fly. They're just not getting feed from the invertebrates that normally lay on the bottom. Look at that sludge. It's all caused by thunderstorms that rage in the monsoon season. So let's hope it changes a little bit for next year and the fish will have more to eat.